high alert. New tonight on our news, live at 7, death threats against the nation's leader prompting heightened security. The police chief makes a televised address this afternoon and talks next steps. Plus, police need your help finding two men who allegedly attempted to kidnap an 11-year-old girl after school on Thursday, and where the Commonwealth Secretariat stands on marital rape. Then in our news at 7:30, a judge wants answers after a convicted sex offender is accidentally set free before sentencing. Our news live at 7 starts now. Welcome to our news live at 7. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Kendino Knowles. We begin with some shocking news as two death threats against Prime Minister Philip Davis this afternoon are now under active police investigation. Police Commissioner Clayton Fernander confirming the threats, which the force has classified as high level, making a televised address from the office of the Prime Minister late this afternoon. Marlena Leonard is following this. She joins us now live in studio with the latest. Marlena?
Yes, Kendino, the notice of the press conference came in late this afternoon, only initially referencing an incident that had happened at the office of the Prime Minister. But the seriousness of the situation became clear shortly after Press Secretary Clint Watson took to the podium.
Shortly after noon, this afternoon, two anonymous calls, believed to be male, called in and made that threat to the Prime Minister. Officers responded, and we now have a full-scale investigation that is ongoing at this time.
But seeing that a video circulating of a demonstration at Coalition of Independence leader Lincoln Bain's February 1st protest outside of the House of Assembly shows a crowd member suggesting the Prime Minister be assassinated.
Hey, when are you on assassinate him? That's what he need.
The commissioner blames acts like this, saying they bring the temperature to another level. When asked if the Commissioner of Police is considering any connection to supporters of the Coalition of Independence, Fernander tells us,
we can't rule it out. That is a line of inquiry that we are following. We can't rule it out, not at this time.
But aside from asking for the public's assistance in the investigation, Fernander is tight-lipped about the methods that will be employed to find the callers.
I won't go in depth with what we are doing, but we have our technical crew on the ground with a view of trying to identify where the calls come from. I will not wish to go in depth as to how far we will go with it.
For now, the commissioner says security will be ramped up, but assures the public there are no concerns about manpower issues, saying it'll be a joint effort with the Defense Force. We were also able to speak to the Prime Minister about the incident on his way out this evening. You can hear his response in our 7:30 newscast. Back to you, Kendino.
All right, thanks a lot, Marlena Leonard, reporting for us. We'll see you back at 7:30. And police are searching for two men who they say attempted to abduct a preteen girl on Thursday. Police say the frightening incident happening after 3 p.m. while the 11-year-old was in the area of Balfour Avenue and Charles Vincent Street when two men in a white van attempted to abduct the primary school student. The child was able to escape unharmed. If you have any information that can assist police with this matter, you are asked to call 911, 919 or Crime Stoppers at 328-TIPS. And three men have been charged with planning to commit an armed robbery. Prosecutors say Andros resident Tito Newton, Edrico Colebrook, and Solomon Fowler conspired to commit the holdup on January 28th. Newton and Colebrook allegedly carried out the robbery on the same day. Now, prosecutors say they robbed Joshua Zimmerman of $8,600 and a check for more than $1,000. Police allegedly found them with $3,688 believed to be part of the stolen cash when they were arrested. Now, police say Zimmerman was at his home in San Andros when a man dressed in a white fisherman's outfit came to him in San Andros asking for a job. The man pulled a gun on him and robbed him during the altercation. Now, the accused were not required to enter a plea to the charges of conspiracy to commit armed robbery, and receiving when they appeared before Magistrate Samuel McKinney on Friday. Bail was denied. They're expected back in court on April 11th. And a man is in custody in Grand Bahama tonight after police found suspected marijuana in his car. It happened after 11 o'clock on Thursday night as officers attached to Operation Restoration were routinely patrolling near Tano Beach. That's when they say two men acting suspiciously in a light-colored Honda vehicle. Officers stopped and searched the men and found the drugs on the driver, that is, who was arrested. and the advance team sent by the Commonwealth Secretariat may have left town today, but not before our Marlena Leonard got the chance to sit down with the gender advisor, Jennifer Namgyal, to discuss plans for this summer's meeting. Also discussed was the Secretariat's stance on marital rape.
The fact that the government of the Bahamas has invited Commonwealth Women's Affairs ministers to meet in August is really a demonstration of their commitment to furthering gender equality and women's empowerment.
That's Jennifer Namgyal, gender advisor with the Commonwealth Secretariat and one of the representatives who visited the country this week in preparation for the 13th Commonwealth Women's Affairs Ministers meeting that will be hosted here this August. The conferences are designed to discuss equality and gender-based violence issues. I asked the gender advisor what's her take on the Bahamas' ongoing debate about the criminalization of marital rape.
So it's very much an issue that the Secretariat is supportive of. It is an issue that most of our member countries have legislated against, but it is one that remains a topic of discussion within some of our countries. So I think the fact that it continues to be a matter of debate is obviously an issue right across the Commonwealth, indeed across the globe.
The Davis administration has said marital rape will be addressed in the proposed gender-based violence legislation, but consultation has gone on for months as talks are ongoing with religious leaders. Here's Namgyal's take on the relationship between religion and gender issues.
The fact is most, if not all of our member countries are countries that have, a number of deep faiths present and active in them. And I would say really that the space is there for our governments to work with faith leaders in furthering human rights, and women's human rights in particular.
When it comes to those upcoming August meetings, she says shared issues among Commonwealth countries are a perfect example of some of the benefits of the Women's Affairs Ministers' meetings. And the meeting isn't just a forum to discuss issues.
It's an opportunity, I think, for ministers to share amongst their peers, amongst other ministers, what has worked in their countries, where there remain ongoing challenges, and what countries might learn from each other.
Reporting for Our News, I'm Marlena Leonard.
All right, it's time now for your first look at temperatures. Meteorologist Greg Thompson is in the Weather Center with the latest look across the islands. Greg?
Yeah, thanks, Kanuna, and welcome everybody for our first look at weather. Yeah, we are watching a cold front that's now pushing into the northwest Bahamas with some showers and isolated thunderstorms. We'll tell you more about that in our satellite view, but outside our studios, it's mostly clear over most of the islands tonight, 77 degrees, very warm. Your winds are out of the southwest at 7 miles per hour, and your field strike temperature at 75 degrees. Temperatures around the islands tonight, it's 76 in Freeport, Grand Bahama, as well as in Marsh Harbor, Abaco. Marlestown, Bimini, you're seeing some showers as that front pushes into the northwest Bahamas, 79 there, 79 also in Great Harbor Key, 77 in Nicholstown, Andros, here in the capital, and in Governor's Harbor. Into the central Bahamas, 77 in Kemps Bay, we pick up 78s in Arthurstown, Cat Island, Georgetown, and in Deadman's Key, 76 over in Coburn Town, San Salvador, and into the southeast Bahamas. 79 most locations, with the exception of Abraham's Bay, you are 78, and our neighbors to the southeast, Turks and Caicos Islands, you are 79 at this hour. Satellite view, frontal boundary with some showers and thunderstorms associated with it, pushing across the central portions of Florida earlier today, now moving into the northwest Bahamas. Some showers and isolated thunderstorms associated with that boundary will continue to sink towards the south, should move into the capital sometime late tonight and early tomorrow with some residual showers as the front continues to fall apart. But high pressure behind that will be building across our area. We're looking for some very windy conditions tonight through tomorrow, so we are advising boaters in the northwest and portions of the central Bahamas to remain in port, and we advise you beachgoers to refrain from getting into the waters. That is your first look at weather. Stick with us. We'll tell you more about your weekend forecast later to come.
Thanks, Greg. Still to come on Our News, what led public service workers to protest outside the Ministry of Works this morning. Plus, why potholes shouldn't be a problem for Village Road for a long time. And a historic building on Grand Bahama is demolished. We'll tell you why on the other side of this break. Members of the Bahamas Public Services Union staging a protest outside the Ministry of Works, the action stemming from concerns like undefined roles and lack of respect. President of the Bahamas Public Services Union, Kimsley Ferguson, leading the protest today.
It appears as if the Beach and Parks Authority does not understand their clearly defined role, which is laid out in the Act, the Beach and Parks Authority Act, which says that they have the function to control, plan, design, develop, administer, manage, and maintain to conserve the natural beauty and topographic features of public parks and beaches. It didn't say road voyages, which clearly comes under the remit of the Ministry of Works.
All right, now we reached out to Beaches and Parks Chairman Mikhail Barnaby, who for now declined to comment, but longtime workers, they're speaking out. We'll have the full story coming up at 7:30. And now to our Work in Progress segment. Tonight, our Jamila Mizik tells us how the Ministry of Works is ensuring that you've got the smoothest ride possible on the newly redeveloped Village Road. Take a look.
The Ministry of Works is targeting potholes across the island. Over at the Village Road Improvement Project, resident engineer Albrion Simonet Jr. says they won't be an issue anytime soon.
Originally, we wanted to just trench and reinstate trenches. What we found is that to make sure that the pavement integrity is intact, we've actually opted to rework the entire base of the road. And in reworking the base of the road, it ensures a more longevity of pavement. And so as we build this road in layers and we pack it very tight, we're ensuring that we reduce the future development of potholes.
He says they've also spoken to business owners in the area, as well as consulted with utility companies regarding any issues that needed to be addressed in order to mitigate having to dig up the road later.
We are ensuring the highest quality standards. Our inspectors are always on the ground, always ensuring that we've got a proper compaction of the road base, so ensuring that the ground is hard. We're ensuring that the asphalt is at the right temperature when we put down the asphalt, make sure it's hot enough to go down. As we go through, we're testing underground utilities, ensuring that we don't have to come back in the future to dig up water lines, to dig up power lines and sewer lines and things of the like.
Reporting for Work in Progress for Our News, I'm Jamila Mizik.
When our news comes back from the break, we turn our spotlight to stories making headlines across the world as the Prime Minister of Jamaica pledges support to help stabilize Haiti. Plus, how one business continued to bloom during the pandemic. And later, we'll take a look at what was making news on this day in history. The details when our news returns. This is our news. Welcome back. We turn our attention now to stories making headlines across the world. U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken has postponed a trip to China after authorities say a Chinese spy balloon was discovered flying across the country. Blinken was expected to meet with his Chinese counterpart and potentially with President Xi Jinping. The visit would have come amid fraying tensions between the two countries. China has since said the balloon is used for meteorological research and deviated from its route because of bad weather.
I am aware of the reports and I'm in the process of understanding and verifying the situation. I would like to emphasize that until the facts are clarified, speculation and hype will not help to resolve the issue properly. China is a responsible country that has always strictly abided by international laws, and it has no intention of violating the territory and airspace of any sovereign country. Regarding this balloon issue, as I have just mentioned, we are in the process of understanding and verifying the situation and hope that both sides can handle it together calmly and cautiously.
Africa's Public Health Agency says countries with deadly cholera outbreaks on the continent have no immediate access to vaccines amid a global supply shortage. The acting director of the Africa Centers for Disease Control and Prevention told journalists on Thursday that the agency is working with the World Health Organization and the Vaccine Alliance, Gavi, on ways to obtain more doses. WHO and its partners recommending in October that countries temporarily switch to using a single dose of the cholera vaccine instead of two because of the supply shortage.
Our humanitarian colleagues also note that the cholera outbreak in parts of Oromia and Somali regions has seen more than 1,000 cases reported to date. Close to 1 million people are considered at high risk. An oral cholera vaccination campaign has been launched, and 33% of the people they intend to assist have been reached so far.
Honda and the U.S. government are urging owners of about 8,200 older vehicles not to drive them until dangerous airbag inflators are replaced. The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration issuing do not drive advisory for the 2001 through 2003 vehicles with Takata inflators that have a high possibility of exploding and hurling shrapnel in a crash. The safety agency says the risk to drivers and passengers is dire because the so-called alpha inflators have 50% chance of exploding in a crash. Vehicles affected include the 2001 and 2002 Honda Accord and Civic, the 2002 Honda CR-V and Odyssey SUVs, the 2003 Honda Pilot, the 2002 and 2003 Acura 3.2 TL, and the 2003 Acura 3.2 CL. A Brazilian senator has said the country's former leader, Jair Bolsonaro, was at a meeting about a plot to keep him in power. Marcos Duval has alleged he was asked to get the head of the Electoral Authority to compromise himself to discredit the presidential election. Bolsonaro narrowly lost October's vote, prompting unsubstantiated claims by his supporters of voting fraud. His son has admitted that the meeting took place but denies a crime was committed. Bolsonaro has voiced regret for the unrest but denies he caused it. The former president is currently in Florida after leaving Brazil at the end of December before his successor was sworn in. And 2 men found guilty of high seas piracy attacks that killed 7 fishermen off the Guyana coast in 2018 have been sentenced to death. 45-year-old Nicole Minar and 48-year-old Pramod Prasad were convicted of masterminding an attack on a group of fishing vessels in waters near neighboring Suriname in a row over access to prime fishing grounds. About a dozen others were rescued after drifting on the waters for days. Police said some of the men were thrown overboard with their hands tied or weighed down with boat batteries. Others were reportedly chopped with machetes or burned with hot engine oil and tossed into the water. Authorities say the sentence handed down by a Guyanese court has broken the back of a deadly group that preyed on fishermen for years. And Jamaica's Prime Minister Andrew Holness says his government is willing to send soldiers and police officers to Haiti as part of a proposed multinational security assistance deployment. Holness told the island's House of Representatives on Tuesday that he wants to help Haiti and support a return to a reasonable level of stability and peace, which would be necessary for any inclusive democratic process to take root. The pledge is the first from a nation in the Western Hemisphere for offers of boots on the ground after Haiti's Prime Minister and other top officials requested the immediate deployment of foreign troops in early October. Holness likening the aid that Haiti has received so far from the international community to buckets of water to help put out a raging fire.
Still to come in our news, today in history, find out interesting facts about the day that was February 3rd and the publishing of an expose on hotel and casino operations in the Bahamas in 1967. Plus, Greg is back with your extended weather forecast. And then in our news at 7:30, why an economist says Bahamians shouldn't be worried about a possible recession in the United States. We've got the story when our news continues.
Welcome back to our news. It's time now to turn our spotlight on events that shaped the day that was February 3rd. Take a look. On
this day in Bahamian history, in 1967, Life magazine published an expose on the hotel and casino operations in the colony. The article focused on the corrupt practices of the former United Bahamian Party UBP administration. Then, almost 10 years later, in 1974, a New York Times article detailing how businessman Howard R. Hughes was apparently backed by Bahamian leaders was published. The article reads, "The reclusive billionaire appears to have made his peace with the governing political party in the Bahamas and will be permitted to live here while fighting his legal battles with the United States and various persons suing or investigating him from there." And finally, in 2016, police announced a search was still ongoing for convicted murderer Ormond Leon, who escaped from a corrections bus just off East Bay Street the day before. Police searched for 2 weeks before the 26-year-old was recaptured at a home in Bushes on Fire Trail Road. On February 17th, Leon was sentenced to just over 41 years.
Well, it's not just your everyday job, but it's become a passion for one entrepreneur. Tonight, our Jamila Mizik talks to a local florist who shares how her business blossomed overnight.
Candice Cargill is not your average flower girl. The modern-day florist says her educational background stems from public relations and marketing, but her love for creating arrangements has gotten her to where she is today.
When I was away in college, I used to just buy bunches of flowers and put it together myself. And so by the time I got here, it was almost like a side hustle for me. And it just so happened that I got the attention of a local garden center who was interested in opening a flower shop at the time.
She says encouragement from her family pushed her to establish her own business. Cargill says during the pandemic, while many were closed for business, she set her sights on a peculiar market.
I cling to the luxury market because that was the design style that I was most comfortable in. I cling to the yacht market as well because that was an untapped market at the time. It just so happened that during the pandemic, yachts were the only, I guess, they were like hotels on water. They were the only ones allowed to operate, and they always need flowers for every trip. And I was always, like, it was crazy, crazy busy. But that's what built this.
Today, Candice's business has branched out into a storefront location.
It's a lot of work, and people only really appreciate the final product, the beauty of the final product, but it's a lot of blood, sweat, tears, strenuous work, laborious work. It's only pretty at the end. I always say you have to look for the white space in the market and you have to color it in. And I think that's what I did with all of our products, as well as the clientele that we go after, the markets that we go after. It's a lot of studying. It's not just you wake up in the morning and you just do an arrangement. You still have to be on top of things. And that's how I run this business.
Reporting for Our News, I'm Jamila Mizik.
All right, and Candice, thanks for sharing your story with our Jamila Mizik. To watch that story again and for all of today's top stories, you can visit ournews.bs. That does it for us in News at 7. Joining us now is Italia Hall. She's got the latest headlines. Italia?
Yes, Ken, thanks so much. While we are still following those threats of death against the Prime Minister, our Marlena Leonard has a story off the top.
New tonight on Our News Live at 7:30, a sex offender is accidentally released before sentencing. We'll tell you how it happened. Plus, the Prime Minister speaks after death threats against him has prompted heightened security. Our Marlena Leonard is live in studio. And later, why one economist says a possible recession in the United States is no reason for panic locally. And later, the Legacy podcast is launched and the life of Sir Milo Butler highlighted. Our News Live at 7:30 starts in a moment.
Welcome to Our News and thank you for joining us. I'm Italia Hall. Some shocking news tonight as two death threats against Prime Minister Philip Davis this afternoon are now under active police investigation. Police Commissioner Clayton Fernanda confirming the threats, which the force has classified as high level, making a televised address from the office of the Prime Minister late this afternoon. Marlena Leonard, who has been following this for us, joins us now in studio with the latest. Now, Marlena, I know you actually got to speak with the Prime Minister. Can you tell us more about that?
Yes, Italia. Talia, as you said, the office of the Prime Minister held a sudden press briefing this afternoon after the Prime Minister's life was threatened multiple times earlier in the day by anonymous callers. We were able to speak to the Prime Minister on his way out of the office this evening, and we were able to ask him how he felt when he heard what had happened. Now, we noticed just how much more security there seemed to be around him than usual, and honestly, he seemed very relaxed. He said he's, business as usual as far as he's concerned, and that it's just unfortunate that things like this are happening. And Italia, just for the benefit of our viewers, the notice of the press conference came in late this afternoon, only initially referencing an incident that had happened at the office of the Prime Minister. But the seriousness of the situation became clear shortly after the Commissioner took to the podium.
Shortly after noon, this afternoon, two anonymous called, believed to be male, called in and made death threat to the Prime Minister. Officers responded, and we now have a full-scale investigation that is ongoing at this time.
But seeing that a video circulating of a demonstration at Coalition of Independence leader Lincoln Bain's February 1st protest outside of the House of Assembly shows a crowd member suggesting the Prime Minister be assassinated.
Hey, when are you on assassinating him? That's what he need.
The Commissioner blames acts like this, saying they bring the temperature to another level. When asked if the Commissioner of Police is considering any connection to supporters of the Coalition of Independence, Fernander tells us,
we can't rule it out. That is a line of inquiry that we are following. We can't rule it out, not at this time.
But aside from asking for the public's assistance in the investigation, Fernander is tight-lipped about the methods that will be employed to find the callers.
I won't go in depth with what we are doing, but we have our technical crew on the ground with a view of trying to identify where the calls come from. I will not wish to go in depth as to how far we will go with it.
For now, the Commissioner says security will be ramped up, but assures the public there are no concerns about manpower issues, saying it'll be a joint effort with the Defense Force. And the Prime Minister also telling us that he's still operating in business as usual. We will certainly continue to follow this. Back to you, Italia.
All right, thanks, Marlena. Great reporting. That's our Marlena Leonard reporting for us live in studio. Well, a judge is seeking answers after a man convicted of a sex crime was released from prison before he was sentenced. Justice Cheryl Grant Thompson was supposed to sentence Rashad Johnson for assault with intent to rape on Thursday. She rescheduled the sentencing to today after he wasn't brought down from prison. She was shocked to learn today that Johnson wasn't brought down because he's no longer being held at the prison. Now, Johnson was convicted last July after he tried to rape a woman after he went to her home on the pretext of buying cigarettes on September 20th, 2020. The woman successfully fought off Johnson and he fled. Now, Johnson was remanded to prison pending sentencing arguments, and he was expected to learn his fate this week. Now, Grant Thompson said she expects Acting Commissioner of Corrections Don Clare to explain what went wrong on February 27th. A 38-year-old man is behind bars after being accused of incest. Prosecutors allege that the New Providence resident had sexual relations with his 11-year-old niece on January 30th. The man's name has been withheld to protect the alleged victim's identity. The accused was not required to enter a plea to the charge when he appeared before Senior Magistrate Carolyn Vo Evans. He's next due in court on May 17th. A 36-year-old man from the Boulevard, Exuma, is in custody after police say he was caught with counterfeit money. Exuma officers arrested the man around 4 a.m. Thursday after they executed a search warrant on the suspect's home. It's all in connection with 3 separate incidents on that island. The first happened on January 23rd when police say the suspect paid for goods and services using Bahamian and U.S. cash. Fake Bahamian U.S. and Bahamian cash. Investigations into this matter will continue. Well, Attorney General Ryan Pinder says no bill on citizenship will be advanced until the Privy Council rules on whether the Constitution provides an automatic right to citizenship at birth to children born out of wedlock to Bahamian fathers and foreign mothers. The question was put to Prime Minister Philip Davis, who said if government loses, then the law will be followed. Before a landmark ruling by Supreme Court Justice Ian Winder in 2020, the interpretation had been those children had no automatic right. The Privy Council heard arguments on January 17th.
It's only appropriate that we allow the High Court of the Land to have their review of something as important to the national interest as citizenship before the government is in a position to advance the legislative regime. We thought that was the appropriate thing to do, and so we await the court decision.
A cool and comfortable evening in the capital tonight. Meteorologist Greg Thompson is in the Weather Center with the latest. Good evening, Greg.
Yeah, thanks, Natalia. Welcome back, everybody, for a quick check on weather outside our studios. Mostly clear skies. It's warm out there. Temperature at 77 degrees. Your winds are out of the southwest at 7 miles per hour. Your feels like temperature, a comfortable 75 degrees. On our satellite, tracking a frontal boundary, now moving through South Florida. Showers and thunderstorms associated with that boundary pushing across the area. Now that front entering the portions of the northwest Bahamas with some prefrontal activity. Those showers will continue to weaken as that front sides towards the south. Breezy conditions expected tonight through tomorrow behind the front as a high pressure system builds across us. So boating is not advised, beaching is not advised through tomorrow. That's your quick check on weather. Stick with us and look at your extended forecast is still to come.
Still to come on our news, the demolition of the Honda Cycles building on Grand Bahama and other efforts to improve the city of Freeport.
Plus, find out why employees of the Ministry of Works took to their headquarters this morning to protest a number of issues. Those details straight ahead.
And worried about a possible recession in the U.S.? Well, we'll tell you why one economist says there's no need for panic. That's all coming up when our news returns. Members of the Bahamas Public Services Union staging a protest this morning at the Ministry of Works. The action stemming from a number of concerns, including undefined roles and lack of respect. Our Megan Shepard tells us more.
President of the Bahamas Public Services Union, Kingsley Ferguson, leading a protest with employees of the Ministry of Works Grounds and Beautification Department. He says there seems to be a blatant disrespect for those employees, and they have been carrying out duties outside of their department. Ferguson says it needs to be clearly identified who has the right to give directives to the employees.
It appears as if the Beach and Parks Authority does not understand their clearly defined role.
Ferguson claims the policy that governs how the relationship between the ministry and authority should work has been breached. He posed these questions to the authority's chairman, Mikkel Bonnaby.
I need Mr. Bonnaby to provide for us a clear organizational chart on how the persons appointed under authority are going to be paid, and the posts for staff members, the calculation of salary and appointment, increments automatic.
Now, employee Princess Mackey has dedicated her life to the ministry for the past 35 years. She says what is happening now is unappreciated and unacceptable.
You can't create problem against your major foreman, supervisor, and the staff who you want to come back and supervise. It isn't fair. No. It's not. So when you coming back at class or you coming with revenge for these staff, yes. And they don't need that. No. They need a supervisor or a foreman. We're going to care for them.
Ministry of Works told us out their own mouth that we as ministry staff, well, why we have to be bowing down underneath the Beach and Park Authority? Why?
We reached out to the Beaches and Parks chairman, who for now declined to comment. Now, according to Ferguson, the issue has been ongoing for over 2 weeks, and they are prepared to continue agitating until they come to a resolution. Reporting for Our News, I'm Megan Shepard.
Thanks, Megan. Well, the FNM is once again calling for Works and Utilities Minister Alfred Sayers to resign after the recently released fiscal strategy report revealed BPL is a res of $150 million. The FNM noted that the Bahamian people were told that $90 million in BPL arrears. Party leader Michael Pintard is calling on government to give a full accounting on the matter.
We want to remind the government that the opposition asked on behalf of the public. They have an obligation to answer the public, notwithstanding the fact that we asked the question. So they ought to explain the $150 million, and it would be helpful for them to lay documents in the House of Assembly so that we could even verify that it is only $150 million.
Back in October told Parliament government intends to make $10 million in payments to Shell each month for 9 months to satisfy BPL's debt to its fuel supplier. Pintard says government isn't too free with information.
This administration is not given to being transparent, notwithstanding that in opposition, it berated the former administration, and now in government, it is auditing every authority, board, ministry, department, and vigorously pursuing getting both the Auditor General and private companies to audit everything and everyone. However, they themselves do not hold themselves to the same standard. And when we discovered the Bermuda trip, and it was only then that they began to drip feed what amounts of money they're paid. And even now, we do not know what the total amount is. We've seen no documentation.
Bahamians should not be concerned about a possible recession in the United States. That's according to economist Zhivargo Lang. As for his projections, he's expecting the economy to grow. Berthany McDermott reports.
Amid fears of a possible recession for the United States, economist and former F&M cabinet minister Zhivargo Lang says there's no reason for panic. Lang explains the move comes as the United States Federal Reserve is trying to slow the economy down due to too much cash in the system.
It's not the normal kind of, things are collapsing recession. It's a slowing down of an economy that was growing very quickly because of injected capital. So unless there's something that's going to impact tourists coming to the Bahamas, there is no reason for us to feel panicked about anything that's being said about the United States of America right now.
Back in October, Fidelity Bank CEO Gowan Bowe warned a recession is on the horizon. However, Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Tourism Chester Cooper brushed off the possibility of a recession as he pointed to strong tourism bookings for this year.
This is not like a recession where some shock prevented businesses from producing or caused employees to be unable to work, etc. That's not what's happening.
Lang sought to make it clear it's only a slowing of the U.S. economy. He also says the rapid growth of the economy is causing inflation.
It doesn't mean the economy isn't growing. It just means that it's slow. And in this case, it's talking about a slowing of the rate of growth. This is not a reversing of the economy's fortunes. It's talking about slowing down. It's like if you're running 100 miles per hour and I slow you down to 90 miles per hour, you're still running fast. You're just not running as fast.
As for what he expects will happen next,
the Bahamian economy is going to continue on a good, solid recovery path, just as it is now.
Reporting for Our News, I'm Berthany McDermott.
When Our News comes back from the break, leaving a lasting legacy, two descendants of Sir Milo Butler launch a new podcast.
Plus, coming up in sports for you tonight, the UB Mingos headed to Florida. They tried to play some softball down there. Mixed results. We'll tell you how they did just ahead. Stay with us.
But first, the city of Freeport says farewell to an eyesore. We'll tell you how the Grand Bahama Port Authority is making it happen on the other side of this break. This is Our News. Welcome back. An historic building in Grand Bahama is gone following another demolition exercise by the Grand Bahama Port Authority. This as the GBPA is focusing on maintaining the image of the city and is calling on other property owners to do the same.
This demolition exercise involves the demolition of the former Honda Cycles building, which is a building that sat in disrepair for a number of years. It's located on Queens Highway in a very populated business district.
Assistant City Manager at the Grand Bahama Port Authority, Renato Carrioyu, says the GBPA wants to ensure that the appearance of the city of Freeport is maintained. The Honda Cycles building has been a part of Queens Highway for decades, but now it's no more.
One of the owners had initially planned to demolish it, but those plans did not come to fruition, and we took it upon ourselves from our legal procedure to demolish it.
He says it's also GBPA's goal to stabilize property value throughout the city.
This one on Queens Highway is of particular concern because it's one of the first buildings that persons see when they come to the island, and it's heavily trafficked by residents.
The assistant city manager says over the years they've spent thousands of dollars to conduct the demolition exercises. He admits that there are a number of buildings that are eyesores on Queens Highway.
What we want to sensitize the property owners to is the need to maintain, repair, or sell those dilapidated structures so that the buildings do not continue to be eyesores.
And there are a few other areas on the GBPA's list to demolish in the inner city community,
such as Caravel Beach, along Pioneers Way, and Grenfell Avenue.
All right, cousins Franklin Butler II and Loretta Butler Turner have teamed up to create a new podcast called The Legacy Podcast. The first episode was released at a launch event last night and centers around the life of their grandfather, Sir Milo Butler. The podcast can be watched or listened to on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts. Co-host and co-creator Loretta Butler Turner telling Our News that the show is not only hosted by the duo, but a rotation of guests, young and old, to offer different perspectives. While the University of the Bahamas ladies softball team returning home for a 4-game set in Florida, meanwhile Buddy Hield and the Pacers take a tough loss. Here's Marcellus Hall with a check on sports.
All right, thanks, Natalia. Welcome to our sports, everybody. I'm Marcellus Hall. The UB Mingos ladies softball team made a trip to Florida this past week to see if they could get their feet wet in terms of international competition. As it turns out, they had mixed results in this regard and did not win any games, but they got some much-needed experience. Let's take a look. University of the Bahamas Mingos softball team picking up international experience over the past weekend, doing a South Florida tour against Fort Lauderdale University and Florida Memorial. The Mingos lost to the Florida Memorial Lions 11-1 and 12-4 on Friday, and then lost to Fort Lauderdale University Eagles 11-zip and 20-3 on Saturday. First game Friday against the Florida Memorial Lions. Ramona Hanna connecting on a 2-2 pitch in the third inning to bring in Adonia Roll for the only score for the Mingos in the first game. The team had a few defensive spurts during the course of those games. The Mingos, though, struggled on offense against the Lions and dropped both games 11-1, and as you mentioned, and 12-4. Taking on Fort Lauderdale University, the Mingos had hope to turn things around. Adonia Roll with a 2-1-2 pitch bumps Sophia Cartwright to second to start things off. Next inning, Cartwright catching fire to Kanisha Kelly at second for the pickoff. Mingo's defense picked up and offensively became more productive, but still falling in both games 11-0 and 20-3. Head coach Shane Aubrey said he felt the team could have performed better.
One of the things that hampered us last year was pitching. Just so after we actually improved on pitching this year, but our defense it fell down terribly this year, which eventually led to the lopsided part of the games. We didn't hit the ball as well as we did last time, so we struggled hitting the ball and we struggled on defense, which, like I said, is quite disappointing, knowing that we can hit the ball. Our pitchers were doing an extremely good job, but unfortunately, physical errors and mental errors was the result of us not performing as well as we could have.
To the NBA we go, where Buddy Hield and the Indiana Pacers taking on the LA Lakers. And this one, boy, I tell you what, it'd be a barn burner going right down to the wire. Anthony Davis back in the lineup for the Lakers. He would have a big one, 31 points, 14 rebounds for him. But let's pay our attention now to our guy, Buddy Hield, the Grand Bahama native, unable to get it done as the Lakers win 112-111. Buddy, boy, I tell you what, did what he could. 36 minutes, 14 points, 5 rebounds, 2 assists, 2 steals in the contest. But as we mentioned, it did come in a losing cause. Indiana now back to the drawing board as they try to figure things out moving forward down the rest of the season. Their next game will come your way on Friday when they take on, actually tonight, when they take on the Sacramento Kings in Indiana. And that's your check on sports for you here on this Friday. I'm Marcellus Hall. Back to you, Italia.
Still ahead on our news tonight, a new multi-purpose community center breaks ground in Baintown, creating a safe space for residents. And no matter what you have planned this weekend, Greg is back in the Weather Center with your weekend weather planner. That's all coming up when our news returns. Welcome back to our news. Will we see a change in weather conditions over the next few days? Well, Greg is back in the Weather Center with your extended forecast.
Thanks again, Natalia, and welcome back, everybody, for our final check on weather. A complex weather pattern setting up for us. Frontal boundary now pushing into South Florida and into the northwest Bahamas with some showers and isolated thunderstorms associated with the boundary. It's going to continue to side towards the south, should stall across the northwest Bahamas tonight through Saturday. A low-pressure system will build along that frontal boundary by Monday. That will eject out towards the north and east. That will in turn drag that frontal boundary through us by Monday into Tuesday. High pressure is going to be building across our area behind this front tomorrow and into early portions of next week. So beaching and boating becoming hazardous tomorrow. We're asking you boaters to remain in port and you beachgoers not to get into the waters. Taking a look at our future forecast, that frontal boundary, as I mentioned, showers and isolated thunderstorms associated with the boundary will move into the northwest Bahamas, should stall by tomorrow, and we expect some scattered showers, cloudy conditions to persist across the area. But by Sunday, we expect that boundary to lift back towards the north once again, and then more showers and thunderstorms will be in the forecast. And then by Monday, we expect the front to really go through us by that time frame. Boating forecast for the northwest Bahamas, small craft, we're asking you to remain in port. Your winds will be southwesterly ahead of the front, but they will be shifting quickly north to northeast, 20 to 25 knots. They will be gusting higher at times across the northwest Bahamas. Sea is 5 to 8 feet, but they will be up to 12 feet in some swells. Your low tide will be at 12:33 in the morning. For the central and southeast Bahamas, a caution fly if you're down there. Northeast to east winds, 15 to 20 knots. Seas running 4 to 6 feet over open waters. Here's a look now at your national forecast. In your extended forecast, that front boundary, as I mentioned, will stall across areas. So we're looking for some showers on Saturday and Sunday, possibly even into Monday as the front boundary kicks back towards the south and moves through us. And then we're looking for some improving conditions by the early part of next week. That's a look at our weather. Make it a safe night and have a great weekend, everybody.
All right, thanks, Greg. Well, an inner-city church breaking ground on a multi-purpose center today aimed at catering to that community. Pastor of the new Unity Fellowship Church, overseer Sharon Nairn, says it wasn't easy acquiring the land, but she says the nonprofit organization went to every park in Baines and Grantstown, distributing food and groceries.
The vision for this multi-purpose building, we want to be able to teach adults reading. We want children to be able to print their project, come in a safe environment. We want clothing, feeding. It's going to be totally free.
Also on hand for the groundbreaking ceremony, Deputy Governor General Cynthia Mother Pratt and State Minister for Social Services and Urban Development Lisa Ramming. Pratt, who served as Minister of National Security and Deputy Prime Minister, stressed how important the facility is for the area.
What you're doing now, you can't begin to imagine what it means to the children of today.
All right, great initiative. And with that, we thank you for joining us for our news tonight. On behalf of the entire team, I'm Natalia Hall. We'll see you tomorrow night. Have a great evening.